Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us for the next 30 minutes. This person here looks a little different from my usual co-rambler, so I'll introduce her in a second. Tonight we're going to be talking about the really important matter of your kids and putting money to work for them. We're going to make it very easy for you to start to get your kids investing, and I'm thrilled to announce my new co-host, a mum and a relatively new investor with her kids. She's a high flyer at zero, a lover of wine and walking. We love to do a lot of both of those things together. And she is a source of endless inspiration in my life. I go to Rachel a lot. She's one of my great friends and does know a little bit about me. So I will let you introduce me, Rachel.
It would be my honour. Hi, everyone. Hopefully I won't trip over my words tonight, but it's really cool to be here. Thank you, Natalie. So this is Natalie, in case you were wondering. She is the head of experience at Hatch. Hatch is Kiwi Wealth's digital investing platform. And they offer a fresh new way of offering Kiwis an opportunity to invest their money at their own speed, in their own way, to create a portfolio that really reflects them, which has been something that I've been really drawn to. And we talk a lot about this from time to time on our walks drinking wine, not at the same time, or sometimes yes at the same time. So why does Hatch exist, Nat?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We do talk about this a lot. We basically were founded to take the tools and opportunities that were previously reserved for only the financial elite and put them in the hands of everyday Kiwis. So basically, at a fundamental level, we want every Hatch investor to grow serious wealth and become a millionaire. Whew, I know. Which is on that note, when we're talking about millionaires, quick legal note, this webinar is intended for informational purposes. Neither of us, surprisingly, although we absolutely look like it, are financial advisors. So this is not financial advice. We do hope to inspire you to do your research and decide what's best for you and your family. So yes, don't take anything we say tonight as gospel. But let's get into it.
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel, you started investing with your kids.
Yeah.
Why did you start?
Well, it's a very good question, actually. I don't know about everyone else out there with young kids or older kids, but it has actually taken me a little while to feel like a grown up as a parent. But in all seriousness, I wanted to take to play a responsible role in their lives in terms of setting them up and ultimately giving them some control over their lives as they get older. And for me, like a lot of other people, I had a marriage breakdown, which was one thing in itself. But the other thing that came out of the back of that, which was really important to me, is that I knew it was going to be down to me. So I needed to start thinking a little bit more carefully about it.
And I think that's, and I absolutely agree with that because like we probably will keep saying tonight, we've had multiple conversations about it. But one of the things that I think, you do say that, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about your relationship is that you have quite what I would say almost unique thoughts about investing with the father of your kids who are you no longer with. So what are those thoughts?
Well, the boy's father and I have got a really good co-parenting relationship. And look, we've worked at it. Like, it's been a number of years and there's been ups and downs, but we're in a really, really good place. But look, the one thing that we've always agreed on right from the outset has been that desire to co-parent well and to both support our children in the best way that we can. And we've had, discussions, I guess, especially with, the housing market stuff that everybody's talking about. Recently, we have had conversations about what is it that we can do that's within the realms of what we can afford and what we can achieve day to day to be able to support them and to contribute towards their future as they get older. So it's around, basically we landed at allocating a little bit of money each month from both of us to go into the kids' Hatch accounts, and then we work with them together to decide how that's going to be invested.
And I think that's, it is quite an interesting philosophy in a world where there are a lot of people in the same boat, that it's something that you can do together and show sort of unity and and do something for your kids.
And it's got it's a double message, isn't it? You know, because it's like you are giving them that financial, or you're hoping to contribute to their financial literacy. You are setting them up for the future, but you're doing it together. So you're sending them a really good message that like, hey, mum and dad aren't together, but my God, they both care about us.
Yeah.
And they've been able to work towards this to do this for us because that's how important it is.
Yeah, I think, and I love that approach. And also, and it seems to me through that approach, but also with the conversations we've had about investing for your kids, that you have a long-term plan for it, which is awesome. It's but one of the things that we found, and it's the same with adults, but probably even more so with children, that starting is quite a big jump. So sort of go down to the bare basics. How much did you start with for your kids?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a big jump for me too. I don't exactly have money, you know, falling off the money tree in the backyard. So it was a big jump for me as well. And look, I started with $100 each. So $100, excuse me, $100 for my older son who's 9, and $100 for my youngest who's 7. I think it's more important to do the regular amounts in terms of getting into that habit that, you know, that money is allocated towards that every month. And it doesn't need to be massive. Like it's for me, it's more about the regularity. It's not about these massive amounts that I do want to be able to feed my children every week. So that's obviously a major concern, especially when I'm by myself, because I know it's down to me. So it is about, I guess, being regular, and that's the thing that I like about Hatch, is that it's not intimidating. You know, like my biggest fear has always been like $100, whatever, you're not an investor, go away type thing. Hatch doesn't matter. You put your $100 in, you get your charge, you get on with it. It's easy.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it is quite interesting when you talk about sort of those smaller amounts, that $100, and we'll go into talking a little bit more about sort of how you can invest later on. But one of the things that we do talk about a lot is the importance and how time is your best friend when you are an investor. So I would say by starting now with 7 and 9-year-olds, you can pretty confidently say that you've set your kids up financially for life. But we also, hopefully, but we also know that money is only part of it. And knowing what to do with that money is obviously really, really important. At some point, you're going to have 18, 25-year-olds. There's a gap where you can decide when to give your children your money. And we know that a lot of lotto winners end up losing their lotto winnings because they don't have the money management skills to go.
It's just landed in their lap.
Absolutely. So your kids are going to be in that position in you know, 20 years, 18 years. So I suppose the first thing, the first step of getting kids interested in learning about money is getting them excited about investing to begin with. So how did you get them excited about starting?
I mean, I think it was somewhat organic, but also then became a little bit more considered, I guess, as I went on. So my kids are aware that I'm independently supporting them, you know, that me going to work every day and coming home with money is supporting them. And so I think that's been not ramming it down their throat, but just kind of reminding them that it's down to me. Like that's why I go to work and all of that kind of stuff. And so I guess I wanted to get that balance of like getting them to understand that level of responsibility, but I don't want them to be scared. You know, they're 9 and 7. It's not really they shouldn't have to worry about that at their age. But I think awareness is a good balance at that level. They know I started at Hatch. I know it's hard to believe that I maybe talked about it a little bit. And they know the companies I'm interested in because I talk to them about it. I talk to them about, you know, stuff that's going on with me. One of my bigger investments in my portfolio is Tesla. My 2 boys love Tesla for a variety of reasons, not just because I'm investing in it, because it's obviously in the news and they've become aware of it. And so now they're like, look, Mummy, there's a Tesla, you know, whenever we're driving past one in the street, which is great recognition for me. And so I just guess for me the basis of it was get them interested in and introduce them to the ability to invest in companies that they're interested in, that are in their worlds. And of course, when I got to that point where I was having that conversation with them about what they're interested in, it was Roblox, and like Roblox
Perfect
for
timing.
them. I know. I mean, I was like, seriously, I did not plan that.
Roblox.
I did not
never
plan that. Yeah, but Roblox is everywhere for anyone that's got really young kids. It's the gaming platform that they're all on. There's, Lil Nas the rapper did an album release concert on Roblox. It's pretty amazing. For me, it's like, do I want to know that? But yes, I do know that. So when I went to them and said, well, you can invest in that. I mean, that's great. That's such a cool thing. Yeah.
And I just want to do a quick disclaimer that we don't audition people for turning up on webinars on the basis of whether or not they invest in Tesla. It may seem like we do because there's quite a high hit rate, but we're friends for a reason. We have common interests. But it's actually going back to that. That's something that we have discovered across the board.
Yeah.
Kids who used to glaze over, and we've actually, part of the reason we launched kids accounts is we had a lot of parents who are actually very financially savvy tell us ask us, how do I get my kids excited about this? They glaze over at lectures, but what you're saying is you're basically turning the tables by putting it back on them and saying, what are you interested in? Your kids are now asking you. So I suppose the next thing, so you've got them excited, you've started them off with $100, but now you're adding extra. How do you keep that interest going and keep them learning good financial habits?
Yeah. No, that's it's a learning curve for me as well, to be honest. And
it is for everyone.
And it is for everyone, exactly. My kids, I guess I'm fortunate that I'm at a stage with them where they're just starting to become aware of money. So they talk about money a wee bit and sort of, conscious of the tooth fairy that comes to collect, the teeth, and how, they wake up and there's, some hard-earned money under the pillow for them when they wake up. And they get gifts from their grandparents from time to time that live overseas, or all of that sort of stuff. They're starting to become aware of, I've got money. And I sort of saw that and thought, that's really interesting. Technically, you don't have money, I can take it at any time, was my immediate reaction. And I was like, no. So they're starting to do a mixture of spending and saving as well. So they might want to take some money out of the jar to go to the dairy or whatever, but they're also starting to say things like, I want a gaming keyboard for Roblox. And I was like, well, that's, $150. So, maybe you need to let that build up a little bit before you can afford to do that. And you may change your mind, and that's okay as well. So I guess what I've done is I guess thinking about their building sort of interest and excitement about what they can do with money, as I've sort of jumped on that a little bit and sort of said, well, you know what I get excited about is that I own part of a business, and yes, it might be a very small part, but it's a part huge nonetheless. We'll say huge, we'll go with that. But it's, why don't you think about it as me and Daddy, helping you to own a part of a business that you're interested in,
At 7.
At so 7, cool. I know. And you can imagine, like, the eyes are like, whoa, and I try and keep a straight face. But it is that, and it is all true. Like, it's not that I'm sort of, I'm not into sort of telling my kids big porkies. Like, that's the reality. Like, yes, they can be involved. And if they are excited, great.
Yeah. No, I think that's that. But then one of the things that kids are notorious for is, short attention spans. So I know. So how do you deal with that? So how often do you check in on the account? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's so true about the short attention span. Although maybe do I have that too as an adult? Anyway, so me and their father, naturally, we share custody, so we're obviously checking in at regular times during the week about all manner of things. And we are still in the process of sorting out what that might look like going forward in terms of our shared sort of responsibility with them with Hatch. But we have had conversations around, none of us can make the time to do it all the time. And I don't want to do that. And I know that my initial reaction to having a Hatch account was, I'm going to look all the time. And then I was like, no, this is not a thing that I fiddle with every day. This is something that I do when I get paid and I put my money automatically goes into Hatch. And so that's kind of, I guess, the cycle that we'll do with the children as well. So I don't know about everyone else, but I get paid once a month. So that's probably going to be the cycle that I follow to sort of have a look through that. And look, these things will change. And I guess Yeah, they'll go through various interest levels as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say in terms of their age level, you know. So they're really interested at the moment, and it's new and it's interesting, and Tesla and you know, Roblox and all of that kind of stuff. But I feel that as their parents, we need to respond to their varying levels of interest as well, but then just trying to keep responsive to what they need, but also just keeping it a bit chill. I think
that's the thing is initially everyone gets excited, like your kids sound like they're exactly the same as you, but then over time you sort of, there's major events that you might check and then not, so you sort of adapt, but in the meantime that nest egg is growing, exactly. Which to me doesn't sound like the short-term gambling that a lot of people think investing in shares is. So we always like to go back to the why. So what are your children investing for? Like what is the reason behind all this? I mean, it's good to have nice financial habits. It's good to have a cash amount you can give them. But what are they investing for?
So I think, well, you know, my approach and their dad's approach as well is long-term. I'm not interested in short-term fun, and I don't think that that's a particularly good message. That, you know, some people might do it and that's absolutely fine for them. But for me, it's about sort of, the longer-term habits and not focusing on the short-term. And the really good thing is that their dad is the same. So we've both got this sort of view that let's look a little bit further ahead, you know. And I guess the reality is, as we're all sort of listening to in the news and stuff every day, is that we don't know what their future will look like, you know, in the sense that, well, you know, you can talk about their jobs may not be real or even thought of yet, and along with what goes along with that is, what is the housing market going to be like? Will they even want to buy a house? What are the businesses that will be floating around then that they might want to be involved in? All of that kind of stuff. So I can't predict that, and that might and probably will change, but I'd like to be able to say, I guess, have a long-term view of, look, here you go. Here's that base amount of money that you have contributed to, that we've supported you to build up over these years. And, you know, you've been involved in that process, and now you can choose how you spend that money. And I'm really strong on the fact that it's like, it is actually their money. So they've been part of building it up. We've supported them, but when we hand it over, spend it on what you like. So I'm comfortable with that. Like, I'm comfortable with them. They may want to buy into a business. They might want to do whatever, but it's their money and it's their decision. And of course, you know, my ethos all the way through is it's money that I can do without.
Well, and you've taught them the value of that money along the way, because they're taking along for the journey. So you kind of have that inbuilt trust that most people who hand a lump sum without their kids being involved in it probably miss out on.
Well, and you know, you see all of these stories of like, you know, kids that like get given some money and then all of a sudden, as you said with the lotto winners, it's all gone, or they just spend it all on stupid stuff, like we all do from time to time. But it's like, if you haven't had that sort of education and that grounding building up to that, you know, I don't want to just flick over some money to my kids. I want them to learn how to manage it. So when I go and leave this mortal coil, I know that they've got some education.
Love it. Love it.
So I guess one thing I wanted to ask you, Natalie, is, you know, I do have this long-term view because of what I've learned so far. Obviously, you know, there's loads of resources and stuff that I've looked into with Hatch, but outside of that as well. And I wanted to, I guess, understand a little bit more about compounding returns, because I know a little bit about it through my research. So I just wondered, I don't know, do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because I'd definitely be interested.
It's one of my favorite topics. And I don't know, compounding returns, like with most things in the finance industry, we call it compounding growth sometimes. It's a very big scary word for a very very straightforward concept, actually. It's basically the concept of money making money. So we generally work for every cent that we earn, and when you put money in an investment, that money is earning you money. But the thing about compounding returns that makes it considered the eighth wonder of the world, or a magical thing, is that it's not just the money you invest that makes you money, it's the money that your investment earns that makes you money. And you, I suppose one of the ways I'd like to talk about is COVID, because like you sort of alluded to before, we don't really know what the future looks like. And one of the reasons for that is global pandemics and all sorts of things that we found out about. And I think COVID for me really struck me as like such an easy way to explain compounding anything. We've now gone through a couple of different strains of COVID. Some are slightly more contagious than other strains. The impact of those slightly more contagious strains is a huge amount more sick people.
Yeah.
And compounding returns, weirdly, are very similar. The impact of a slightly higher return leads to a much bigger pile of money at the end, generally. So basically, how compounding works is if you take $100 and you put it in a savings account and you get a 1% interest, at the end of the year you have $101.
Yeah.
If you took that same amount of money and you put it in the US share markets and they have an average return of about 10%, you would have $110 at the end of the year. $9 more. Kind of cool, not worth sort of raving about. The thing is, the next year, when you're earning that 1% or that 10%, you're not earning it on that initial $100. You're earning it on the total amount you ended the year with. So it's either 101 or 110, depending on where you put it. I'm talking at a very high level returns. As we know, they're average with share markets. They can go up and down from year to year. But what we mean is that 110 the next year earns you 10%. So that extra $10 that you didn't even touch, you didn't contribute to, you didn't do anything, earns you 10% as well. And then going forward. And as with COVID, very weird example, very effective, over time, over the long run, those really small incremental things at the start to create quite a, what we like to call hockey stick curve.
Oh, I love
it. You know it too. So that's So that's kind of for us one of the big reasons why we are why we are interested in kind of kids and the idea of time and that
the long-term aspect really helps with that hockey stick.
So I want to go back to some sort of practical tips because we sort of talked about the why and the how. And one of the things that I think, like we've talked a little bit about getting your kids excited about money and investing. What would you say is I suppose your top tips for like how to start? Like you mentioned your kids are interested in different companies and different interests. Like how do you start that conversation with them? Like how do you, as a parent, you have full control over their kids' account. How do you how do you start that?
Well, I think is that thing of like monkey see, monkey do. Like you should start first. That's what I did, and I got comfortable. I've seen how it works. I understand how easy it has been for me and how much I've learned through this process and how much confidence I've grown through this process. And so I like to talk to my kids. I'm one of, I sort of mentioned before that like I obviously kid appropriate levels, but I do like to talk to them about it. And so it feels like an everyday thing for them. Like it's not this big, scary, big deal that, with throwing our money somewhere that we don't know about, all of that stuff isn't true. And I guess seeing that and then, as I said, talking about Tesla and spotting Teslas in the street and all of that kind of stuff brings it into their world. And then they start to realize, which my kids have, that there's other stuff that's out there and there's other organizations that are doing cool stuff. And so whilst at the moment their world is quite small, what is it? I don't know. They're at school. So I'm like, what happens when I drop them off? I like to think it's still small enough that mum feels comfortable. But the stuff that's in their lives at the moment, they can invest in all those things. So there's like things like the gaming, obviously, that I talked about with Roblox. They talk to people on video calls. So Zoom Communications is on there. The stuff in their lives at the moment, that's relevant to them, they can invest in those things. So how cool is that, I think, for them to make that connection?
I think that's super cool. And I also feel like we have 7 minutes to go, so I'm going to start racing through.
It's not like me to talk a lot.
It's not like me either. Terrible combo. So I think you're right. One of the things that we hear about a lot is, how does it change for different age groups? So like a 5-year-old is different from a 15-year-old. My theory is that kids aren't actually born scared of money, and they actually are trend spotters. Like you say, like the Roblox thing. TikTok, all the kids are on TikTok before we found it. So I suppose, how do you deal with the change? You've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. How is it going to be different when they're 15?
Probably, but I guess I've got like a really good, I guess, analogy that sticks with me is, and it does play into what you said about kids. Kids get scared as they get older. Like I'm more scared now as an adult than I was as a kid. But I use the analogy of learning to drive. Like I learned to drive at a really young age because I lived in an area where I wanted to get out of. But I didn't have the fear and I didn't, I guess I was confident enough to go, I can do this. You know, I can learn how to drive. I can be responsible for myself. So as soon as I could, as soon as I was old enough to learn how to drive, I did. It opened up my life. It gave me access to people and things that I didn't have before. And as I said, I felt control. As I've gotten older, obviously, like all of us, I've had the odd slip-ups in the car. I'm not saying I'm the perfect driver. I don't think anyone is.
You are the perfect driver.
I'll drive you on holiday again, don't you worry. But what I've noticed about my friends that say my age that haven't got their license is the fear has built up, and they are very nervous and very worried about the what ifs, and it becomes this big block, and then they just suddenly go, I just don't think I can do this. And so I guess my advice, just get started as soon as you can, because the more education that you've got and the more the world opens up, the more opportunity you get from it.
And it's funny because I've never heard that analogy before, but we should have thought about that ages ago, because it's bang on. People who get
TM, I've trademarked it.
Trademarked. I feel like that when we talk to adults, like, it's actually kids aren't afraid of it. They jump straight in. They have conversations like, Mum, we should invest in this. But it's actually adults who've put it off, who've turned it into a big scary thing.
Yep. Totally.
So it totally makes sense. Yeah, and I suppose they already have opinions, and you're there anyway, so you can kind of guide them. And it's kind of a pretty safe, constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of the guidance, like my ex-husband and I have obviously different views on things, and I think that that's really good. And because, you know, we'll sort of challenge each other a little bit on this stuff. And that's great for our kids as well, because they can see that we're talking about different views and different opinions, how much that they should save versus how much they should invest. So I guess, what's your view on that? Like, what do you think about the saving versus investing thing? Because that's obviously something that still gets thrown around a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, like, to us, it's a really clear distinction. Saving is just short-term emergency money. It's for your, it might be for your keyboard for your Roblox game. It could be for your new whatever. But your investments is the long-term stuff. And like you say, you just want it to be money that you can afford to be without for a long time. So you want to have that savings account. If you're an adult or a child, you want to have that savings account at a point that it covers anything you might need in a hurry, so you never have to touch those investments until you need to. I've just seen a cool question.
Same, I've seen it too.
I'm gonna ask you. It's from Lulu. Hi, Lulu.
Hi, Lulu.
So, question: how do your kids talk to your friends about this part of their life?
Talk to their friends.
Yes. Do they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you talk to your friends?
I mean, my children talk to my friends sometimes about their investments, Lulu. But yeah, the kids are talking all the time, like, in terms of, and I think that and again, that's why it's so important for us to be talking about things with them as well, because it's sort of all shares, and like the positive and the negatives come home from school around what's going on, and they absolutely talk to their friends. And one of the biggest conversations, strangely enough, over the recent couple of weeks with starting their own investments is the Roblox stuff, because all of their friends are on Roblox. They've all got profiles. They all play together within reason. I'm, obviously watching at all times. Disclaimer. But yeah, they absolutely talk constantly about it. So I guess
it's probably more natural, because they
they're
not scared of investing. They're also not scared of talking to their friends about their money, because they just haven't learned how to be scared of things.
They haven't built up that embarrassment or that weird thing that we all develop.
How cool would it be if they all grow up, this generation, without getting those fears? And I think, like, what you've said tonight really hit home to me, that most of the stuff that makes us anxious and worried about investing is stuff that we've taught ourselves over time, and that kids are not born with.
Totally.
So I think we have 2 minutes left, so I want to ask one last question, because we think it's pretty cool to offer 50-cent fees for kids accounts. There's no minimum investment. There will probably be a bunch of parents or grandparents or aunties, because we're going to launch the ability for anyone to open a kids account soon. Cool. They might have a kids account open, or they think that they can afford the short amount of time it takes to do it. What's the tips you'd give to those people about what to do next? They haven't started investing yet, but they think it's a good idea, and there is that mental barrier there a lot.
Totally.
What do they do?
Talk to your kids. First off, they will have ideas. As we know, I'm constantly saying, got you. Yeah, I've got your opinion. Thanks. Yeah. So they do have opinions on things. It's just about, maybe giving them the space to talk about that a little bit. And what are they interested in? As I said before, there's like, yes, their worlds are a bit smaller than ours, but there's still stuff going on in those worlds that are worth talking about. They don't need to be able to spout off company names to you. I'll go and look at that stuff. It's
true.
about what am I interested in, and then I'll go, I think I can maybe look into Hatch and see if there's a company that looks at that stuff or whatever. And then there's the 50-cent fee is so good. As I said, I started with $100. Like, that's not that much. And then again, a regular amount that you can afford to be without. And it's okay if it doesn't always work out all the time. What we're going for is the long-term hockey analogy, which I love. But I guess, and my thing, and I'm not sure if you said it or I made it up.
I'm going to claim it before I hear it.
You claim it. There is no business, arguably on any stock exchange, let alone the US one, that is listed and there because they intend to fail. It's just not in that's not part of it.
That's so true.
They are there because they want to succeed, and so give it a whirl.
Love it. And I feel like on that note, it's 8 o'clock. That nailed it. That completely covered everything in half an hour. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Half an hour's hard, but we really appreciate your time. Go forth, open, start, chat to our team anytime. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And
they can get questions to me too if you're interested in me answering anything else too. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming along.